Hi everybody, it's Gretchen here. I'm going to wait a couple minutes because I'm still waiting on a couple people I think are going to be here. In the meantime, we're going to need a couple pieces of scrap paper. So if you don't have any handy, go ahead and grab a few pieces. And we are going to do a little bit of painting tonight. So make sure I'm using a big paintbrush, a big flat paintbrush. You could use a smaller one if you don't have one of these. I've got a cup of water here. And you could use watercolors, but I'm going to use my ink pads. The ink for my ink pads as my watercolors. So you can do whichever you prefer. Hey, Cheryl. I was just saying that if you don't have any scrap paper in front of you, grab a couple of sheets. And we're going to be doing some quick watercoloring, and I'm using one of these big flat brushes, but you could use a smaller brush if that's all you have. But you'll need a little bit of water and either your watercolors or your ink pads. I'm going to use my ink pads, but you could also use watercolor paints, of course. Hopefully everybody saw that on their supply list before and is prepared. We're going to actually do the painting first because then we're going to put it aside to dry in hopes that it dries by the end of the class. If not, we can dry it with our heat tool or just set it aside and put it together when it is dry. It is, I know in this house it's warm. We turn the air conditioner off, so it's warm and not too humid. So I'm guessing odds are good that it will actually dry. While we're putting together all the rest of our cards. The colors I used are Capri and Cashmere, which is a retired color, but Toffee is the current color that is similar to this. Or any light brown tan will do, and a light blue turquoisey color because we need sky and sand. So the first the first card we're going to do is this. So you can, it's probably in the bottom of your stack. And I do have to grab I ended up giving my accessory pack to somebody, and I've got another one on order, but it didn't arrive in time. So I am probably going to end up, I'm using pieces from my, that I didn't use on the first set. You can see there's a lot of accessories or embellishments, left over. So I'm going to use those on this set of cards. So, this is what we're going to be painting. You can see I did a couple of them. This one I did with watercolor paints, but I wanted to show you how to use the inks. So this is done with the inks. Okay, and the piece of paper, cardstock, this is just White Daisy cardstock. And the piece you're going to be painting on is 4 1/4 by 4. So it's not quite square. Just make sure your 4 1/4 is sideways, because that'll give you a little bit to trim off the edge all the way around after it dries. Okay, so when we use our ink for watercolor, we don't want to put our brush right on the ink pad. So what we do is we take the ink pad and we squeeze it a little bit, and that'll make the top of the ink pad touch the top of the cover. And can you see? It might be easier to see on this one, because this one's white. This is the old style pad. This is an old color. So you can see that I transferred ink from the ink pad onto the top of the ink pad. And so the cover, and this is a slick surface. So that's what we're going to use as our palette. I just want to move everything here so I can access it, but you can see it. Sorry about that, guys. I am getting over a cold, and I had a bad cough. And so I'm going to be sucking on cough drops and hope that that doesn't happen again. Okay. So we have ink, each color. And like I said, I'm using Capri, which is like a light turquoise. And the current color is Toffee, this light brown. And we have ink in the top of our stamp cases that we're gonna use to paint with. So I am just going to wet my paintbrush with clean water. And you may want to practice this first, and it's always good to get an idea of what color you're getting. So I'm just, swiping my brush over the top of the pad, picking up color. And I'm going to swipe this on my my scrap paper. And now you can see that the first brush I had was much bolder in color and a little bolder than I want. So I'm just going to add a little more water to my brush, mix that in with the paint, and try again. And now that's a little light. So it's a lot of trial and error. That's better. Okay. So now remember, you can always go back and add more color, but you can't take it away. So I am just going to make a few swipes across about 2/3 of my paper. And it's a very light color. It's a very light mix. So only the first swipe or two is going to have that color to it, and then it's going to quickly fade out. Now, I have used up all my color. If there was water in the top of that, I would have wiped it out first, but I pretty much used up all the water. So I'm just squeezing again, picking up water from my water cup and mixing it again. And because I'm mixing it, I want to swipe it on my scrap paper first to see. Now what I'm going to do is I picked up some more. I swiped it once, and then I'm swiping it on my good paper. Because I mean, if you want a really bold sky, go for it. But I just want pale. And I think I gave you 2 pieces of paper, so you can experiment. And basically that's all we want, is we want some swipes of color to make our sky. Now the pad is still kind of a little damp, and I've added all the color I want. So I'm going to go ahead and just wipe that off. I don't want to add, I mean, it's a water-based ink, so adding water to it is okay, but you don't want to add a ton of water. So I'm just going to clean that off before I close my stamp pad again. Was that clear enough? Just be aware that the more water you add, the more swipes you add to the paper, the wetter the paper is going to get, the more likely it is to curl. The more likely it is to curl, and the longer it'll take to dry. And all of that is fine. You just have to be aware of it. So I'm going to do the same thing with my sand colored ink. I'm just going to move this down. Okay. I'm just going to move this paper aside because it's getting kind of wet. And again, we're just going to swipe. And I want it a little darker, so I'm going to go over it. And I want a little more color to it, so I'm going to wipe off my ink pad cover and add more ink to my top. Oh, good, Lindsay. I'm glad you're here. I'm just painting the background, and what I'll do is I'll do another one so you can see what I'm doing, and everybody, in case it was a little confusing and you want to see it again, it'll be there to see it again. But what I'm doing is I'm using my ink pads as watercolor paints. And you could see I was squeezing my ink pad. This is the old style ink pad, but works with new style. squeezing the pad to transfer some ink into the top of the cover, and adding some water to make it into a watercolor. And then I was just testing it on my scrap paper, and I do want a little more color to this, so that worked out fine. I want my brush to be a little smoother, so I'm actually going to add a little more water there. And I'm just swiping across my cardstock. And I'm going to add more ink again, because I just want to smooth out some of those lines. Now, obviously, if you have a smaller brush, you're probably going to have to make a lot more swipes. There we go. Now, like I said, if you're adding a lot of water to your paper, your watercolor or your cardstock here, this is just cardstock, it's not watercolor paper, might curl. This is curling a little, not a lot. If it is curling a lot and you're having trouble dealing with it, what you can do is turn it over, wet your brush with clean paper, and swipe over it, and it will kind of level it out. I am not going to do that because mine is nice and relatively flat right now. And if you do that, it gets it wet and it takes longer to dry, which I'm trying to avoid. And I don't need it right now, but that's one solution for you. So you've got about 2/3 sky and 1/3 beach here. And I'm going to do that again in case you want to follow along again. Sorry, the talking is setting me off. I was hoping it wouldn't be that bad. Okay, so I'm positioning, to start from scratch, I'm positioning my paper so the 4 1/4 inch side is the horizontal measurement. I am taking my ink pad. This is Capri. And I am squeezing it so that the ink pad, the actual pad, is touching the top of the cover and transferring color onto the cover. You might see that blue on there. That gives me a palette to work on of paint. I'm just dipping my brush into some clean water, and I'm mixing the water with the ink. And then I'm testing it on scrap paper to see the color I'm getting. If you want it a little lighter, you would add a little more water. If you want it darker, you could either do multiple swipes, or if it's really not coming out dark enough for you, you would clean off, wipe down your palette here, and then add more ink to it. And try again. So I'm just going to swipe. And I'm really only getting a couple of swipes each time I pick up color. I'm going to add a little more water because it's getting dry. And I'm covering about 2/3 of the paper. As I said, the more water you add, the more your paper is going to curl. And you do want variations in the color to make it more interesting. The other thing you can do now, let me finish that thought in a minute. I'm going to clean this off because there's some water on here. It won't hurt the stamp pad because the ink is water-based, but we don't want to add a lot of water to it because it'll dilute it. So I'm just going to wipe that off before I close it. And if I needed more color now, I can do that. If you're not comfortable working in the top of the ink pad, you can use any kind of slick surface. Several of our other classes, we used adhesive paper, and this is the release paper for the adhesive paper. It's a slick surface, so you could just rub your ink pad on it, and you'll see the ink transfers to that, and you can use this as a palette. You can use really any kind of piece of plastic, any kind of slick surface. So it makes it really easy. I'm just going to wipe this off before I throw it in the garbage so it doesn't, because otherwise I'll throw it in the garbage and it'll hit something and get ink all over it. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to do the same thing again with the sand color. Like I said, this is an old color. It's called cashmere, but the new color that is similar, and it's actually the color of the embellishments here, is called toffee. Okay, so I've picked up my ink onto the top of my stamp pad cover. I'm going to add some water to it. Test the intensity on my scrap paper. And then swipe across. I am going to add a little more color to that. So I guess if you use a different palette, it might be a little bit easier to get enough color without having to clean and wipe and clean and clean and press and clean and press. It's up to you. But doing it this way means you have everything in front of you without having to grab anything else. There we go. And now we have an easy beach seam. And for anybody who missed it at the beginning, I said you could also use watercolors, of course, but I just wanted to show you how you could use your inks in another way. And you want to, our inks are water-based inks. And you do want to make sure when you do this, oh no, that you do use a water-based ink. This is why we redesigned the ink pads. All right. So now we're just going to put this aside and hope that it dries while we are working on the rest of the cards. All right, so the first card in the stack should be this one. These are pretty easy to put together. The papers and the embellishments are really the stars in this set. Just gonna make sure I don't spill my water over everything. Okay. All right, so I used for this set of cards, I used this stamp set called Why Am I Sending This? And I thought this was kind of amusing, this set. And we didn't use all of them, but we used several of them. It said, without me, you're just also. You are my person. And several other, you can be remember, you can be anything you want to be except younger. So it's funny because some of them you can kind of keep them funny, or you can cut them apart and make them a little more poignant. So whatever works for you. Okay, so our cards, as usual, our card stock is, I should say, is cut to 4 by 11. So we're going to score on the 11-inch side at 5.5 to make our cards 4 by 5.5. And this is we're going to use the darker side of this bluebird paper, or cardstock, I should say. So the darker side is facing you when you score, and it will be on the outside when you fold your card. This is Lagoon. And again, we're going to use the darker side. So we're going to put adhesive on the lighter side. And we're going to line it up on the left-hand side of the card so you have your 1/8-inch border at the top, bottom, and left. And then you'll have a wider border here on the right. Next is our printed paper. And it says happiness comes in waves, over and over and over again. And this one we're going to position on the right side of the card. And mine is cut to the wrong size. Sorry about that, guys. It should be 5 inches tall. Mine is 5.5. Now I did cut these in 2 different spurts because I was waiting for more supplies to come in. So hopefully your piece is the right size. But if yours, measure yours, and if it's not 5 inches tall, then please trim it to be 5 inches tall. Of course, it's always easier to do that before you put your adhesive on. I trimmed both the top and the bottom simply because I was trying not to trim off all the adhesive. But you could just make one cut if you didn't put the adhesive on first. So when you have it cut to the right size, you are going to align it on the right side of the card with an 1/8 inch border to the right, and then center it top to bottom. So you have about 1/4 inch at the top and at the bottom, which will give you a slightly wider border on the left here. So basically we just have some staggered layers. So next we have the wisteria strip. We are going to let the darker side show. And we are going to position this about 3/4 inch up from the bottom of the card. And it's the same width of the card, so it just goes down right. Next, we're going to have this piece of striped. Now your stripe should be going horizontal like that. I apparently cut mine the other way, probably because I just had this extra piece. Like I said, I had been waiting on other supplies. So mine are just going to be going the other way, but yours should be the same as in the sample here. And I'm putting them in, putting it on centered over, top to bottom over that wisteria strip, and about 1/4 inch in from the left edge of the card. And then we have our sentiment, and this is from that set. And this says, "Why am I sending you this card?" And on the inside, it says, "I knew a minute ago." So basically, when you stamp the stamp, you can see it's all one stamp. So I stamped it all on one piece of paper, and then I just cut between the two thoughts to make 2 different pieces, because the other piece I'm going to put on the inside. And I am putting that over the wisteria strip, centered between the right edge of the card and that striped paper, and about 1/8 inch above the bottom of the wisteria strip. We're going to put these pieces on the inside of the card, and then we'll come back and put our embellishments on the outside. So this is another strip of wisteria. Again, we're going to have the darker side show, and we're putting it just a little above center. Hold on, I'll measure that for you. It's about an 1 3/4 inches from the fold line. If you want to measure it, you don't have to. You can just put it where you like it. Okay, so now I'm going to put down that strip that says "I knew a minute ago," and hopefully you'll have a friend that that finds this amusing. Or you could skip this part of it, and you can just keep the "Why am I sending you this card?" on the front, and then write any kind of funny or heartfelt message on the inside. All right, and now you just have a 1/4-inch strip of Lagoon. And I'm going to grab my 1/8-inch tape for this. If you don't have the 1/8-inch tape, you can always use liquid glue or glue stick, glue pen, whatever works for you. I'm putting the adhesive on the lighter side. And I'm putting it right below I'm just going to adjust a little bit. It goes right below your sentiment, but I am going to move the sentiment down a little bit. There we go. So that's your inside. You're going to grab your embellishment pack. And you can see I used a bunch on these cards and there's still a bunch left over. And like I said, I gave my embellishment pack to somebody else and my replacement didn't come in time. So I'm going to use slightly different embellishments on these cards than I used on the samples, but I'll let you know what I used on each. So the first thing is this fern, and you can see on the brown sheet, I used the middle one. I'm just going to use, I guess I'll use the bigger one on this card. Be careful. These pieces come out pretty easily, as you can see as they fall out. But with all these little leaves here, you just want to be careful taking it off. There you go. You just have to find the right spot where it's attached. So we're going to use that guy. We're going to use the seahorse, which is down here. There isn't another seahorse, so I'm going to use this anchor instead. And then we're going to go into our pack of beach glass embellishments. And you're going to find the sand dollar, and it's the larger sand dollar. And then you're going to find your scallop shell. And I'm going to use the smaller sea dollar and this conch shell. And then I use the little tiny scallop, which there's a second one. And then we need a small starfish that is up here. And there's another one over here, so I'm going to use this one. So those are all the embellishments you need, plus your sparkles. If your sparkles hopefully are in this envelope. If they are not, they would be in a different one, but they should be in this one. And that's all the sparkles for all the cards in the workshop. Okay, so I'm going to grab another, or I'm going to grab that sheet of scrap paper I was using before. And I'm going to use liquid glue to attach these embellishments. The first one I want to attach is the fern. So I'm going to move everything aside. I'm going to turn the fern upside down onto my scrap paper. And I'm carefully going to put, first I'm going to clean off my nozzle there. And I'm just going to put dots, little bits of the liquid glue on the bigger areas of the leaves. It doesn't have to, the glue doesn't have to cover everything. It just has to cover enough that it's secure. Put it in a couple of spots on the spine, the stem, whichever you want to call it. And so, see, it's not everywhere, but in enough spots that it should hold it secure. And then the hardest part, which is picking it up without getting all your fingers in the glue, and then attach it down onto the card. Now, a bone folder is really great for this, to press it down without kind of getting your fingers in the glue. Now, just be careful. Now, I didn't get any glue in my scrap paper, but I just want to check that before I put any other accessories down on it. Or I keep saying accessories, but what I really mean is embellishments. And, you know, I don't want to put anything good down in that glue, but I'm good on this piece for now. Okay, so I'm going to put my anchor down next. You're going to, well, you could do an anchor or you could do the seahorse, whichever you prefer. This piece is a little easier because there's wider parts to it. So certainly easier to put the glue on that. And then put it down onto the card. I'm just going to move this up a little so you can see, hopefully see me working a little easier. And then on our sea glass pieces, I believe the matte side is supposed to be the good side. And we're going to put our adhesive on the more shiny side. I'm sure you can feel it, but you can see now when I wasn't trying, you could see the reflection of the light. But I like the matte side, and that's where the design is etched. So I believe that's supposed to, because that would look more like beach glass. So again, I'm not going to put glue all over, even though this is a solid piece for pretty much. I just want to use it sparingly. It's not going to take a lot of glue to keep it held down. Now, if you're going to mail these cards, they will mail, but they are going to be a little thicker with these embellishments on them. So you might want to put like a piece of foam, you know, that packing foam, that really thin. It's actually the foam that comes in our stamp sets. But don't use that because you want it for stamping. But if you had a piece of this foam, you might want to put it, you know, on top of that in the envelope, or some bubble wrap would help to protect it. If it does get thicker than 1/4 of an inch, though, you do have to pay additional postage. But if you just had a thin piece of foam and put that over that, you should be fine. It should mail just fine. So I'm just going to put some glue on my shell here. On my sample card, I had the scallop. I'm using the conch shell here. And I'm just holding it down for a couple seconds to make sure it makes that contact. And then the little tiny scallop. Again, the glue I'm putting on the glossier side. And then my little tiny starfish, I'll put down in the bottom corner. I'm just going to put actually a little glue at the tip of each finger. I don't know what those are called. Just so they stay down well. All right, and now we're going to put our sparkles on, and I'm going to put one here in the corner of the sentiment piece. Put one here next to the starfish. One next to the sand dollar. That dot of glue is a little big, so I'm cleaning that up. I'm going to put a new one. One by the anchor / seahorse, and one above it. So one towards the bottom left and one towards the top right. All right. So there we go. Actually, I'll show you the original one. All good. Just going to put my scrap paper aside for now. These can all stay out as we get our next card. This one is also on Bluebird cardstock. But I love the colors in this collection. Okay, so again, we're going to have the darker side towards us when we're scoring. And we are scoring on the 11-inch side at 5.5. Fold and burnish. Oh, horizontally this time. And we're going to put all our strips down. And they're going to go down so that you have an 1/8-inch border between each of them, and of course at the top and the bottom of the card, and on the left and the right. So I'm just going to line them up, make sure that I did a pretty good job cutting and measuring. Looks pretty good. What I'm going to do, though, start at the top, work my way down. And then before I put adhesive on the last one and put it down, I'm just going to test that measurement and see that we're still good. It's very tough to cut this kind of card ahead of time and make it perfect. Because like I've said before, every ruler, every cutting paper cutter is slightly different, and sometimes they don't align right. But I do my best. So the first strip that's going to go down is the anchors. And I'm going to put it at the top. And I'm going to put it so that, whoops. Should have checked that out before I put it down. First of all, I'm going to turn it upside down because I find it easier to work with when it's closer to me. And I'm going to center it left to right. There should be 1/8 of an inch on either side. And 1/8 of an inch on the top. And if you don't put it down too soon, it should fit perfectly. Okay, so the next one are these lagoon ferns. Yeah, Lindsay, lagoon is definitely one of my favorites, and I know several people who love it. And every time we, as you know, we're getting to a new core catalog, which means there are colors retiring. And we are getting new colors, which, by the way, I saw today and are beautiful. But we're always worried about lagoon. But luckily, everybody loves it, and it has stuck around for a very long time. Chances are, if you like lagoon, you will also like the new color of the year, which is called Journey. It is a teal blue. It is more lagoon is a more of a green blue, and this is more of a blue green, I would say. I would guess it's similar to my rotary rotary cutter color. To let you guys know, the colors that are leaving us this year are melon, raspberry, avocado, nectarine, by the way, the next strip I'm putting down is the one that is that making waves paper, the happiness makes waves. Or happiness comes in waves. Sorry, I keep switching back and forth trying to think. The one big color that I'm not thrilled about is going away. That is pewter, which is a medium gray. We're keeping charcoal, which is our dark gray. So we'll have a light gray and a dark gray, but not a medium gray. So just keep that in mind. There are supplies left of the colors. If you never picked up a re-anchor and you use one of those colors a lot and you want to re-anchor, some of them are still available right now, but they will not be available for long. All right, so the next strip is our wood grain. And as you can see, like I said, I'm leaving about 1/8 inch space between each piece. Yeah, there are a lot of variations with the greens, and there are some nice new greens coming. I know I missed, oh, grape is one of the other colors that is leaving, retiring. Okay, so now, like I said, before I glue this last one down, and it fits perfectly. So, yay for me. Um, if you left a little extra space or a little less space and it doesn't fit quite as perfectly, what you can do is, if you need it to be smaller, you can trim the stripes. Just shave a little off if you have to. If you put it on and you have more space of your card left than you had intended, you can trim the card if you need to. I agree, Lindsay. But mine fit well. I know it's easy for me because I cut it to the spacing that I see with my eyes. Yours might not be exactly the same as mine. So you may need to make an adjustment on this one. So there we go. Actually, what needs to be adjusted on this one is my length is a little long. So here we go. Okay, so now we are going to put our embellishments on before we put this piece on. And the first one you want is this big fern. And I use mine. So I'm going to use this. Actually, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my scallop shell. I'm just pulling off pieces because they're dangling and they're driving me a little bit insane. So you're going to use your big fern from the brown. You are going to use your seahorse from the white sheet. And I'm going to use my fern from the white sheet. And then the little scallop shell from the white sheet. And then also your little scallop from your blue pieces, which I had another one, but I used it on the last card. So I'm going to use my starfish. I'm going to put these all up here. So the first piece you're going to put down is your brown fern. And like we did with the on the other card, I'm going to put down my scrap paper and I'm going to use my white one here. And try to move everything up so you can see it. And I'm just going to add glue to bigger areas. There are not a lot of big areas. You might find it easier if you have a glue pen that has a seems to be glued shut there. Has a tip on it. You can paint that glue. Now that I've done that, I'm going to use that. Or a glue stick. Those might be easier on this piece. Not rubbing it over where I put the liquid glue. And you're going to put it on the left side of the card. Okay, so instead of putting the rest of the embellishments on first, we are going to put the sentiment on first, because then we can position them around them. And I put this on with foam tape. And this says, some of our best times haven't even happened yet. If you don't love the sentiment, you could always turn it over and use the other side of the cardstock for it to say whatever you want. And I am just, I can do this. All right, and so we're going to put this about 1/4 inch from the right side of the right edge of the card and about 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the card. Or wherever you like it positioned over your, I keep saying fern, but it's not really a fern. This was a fern. That's more of a, I don't know, some kind of plant life. Okay, and now we can add our other embellishments. So on here, I put my seahorse with foam tape on the left side here. I'm going to actually, I think, put my scallop up here. And there's not a lot of room here to put foam tape, so I guess I'm going to glue it flat. I'm not going to overlap it because they do have a little bit of a dimension, and I just want to make sure it is glued down really well to that, to the card. Normally I would have overlapped it. All right, so I'm going to put down the whoops, sorry, the little tiny scallop out of the blue, the faux beach glass is down here in the corner. You can use liquid glue to glue that down. Mine is the starfish. And glue that down. And then the white scallop, the small scallop shell, that I did put a piece of foam tape on, a little tiny piece of foam tape to pop that up. Doesn't need much. Whoops. I'm going to put mine over here because it balances it out a little better. But you can see that that's the configuration I had on the sample card. This is the tonight's version. So basically, you can see now if you want to go ahead and make another set of these cards, you can do what I'm doing and use the additional embellishments you have left over in your kit to make more. Okay, and now we're going to put the sparkles on. I need to grab another sheet. So I've only got one left on here. And so I'm going to put one down here by the scallop shell. One right next to the S of the sentiment. One in the left corner above the seahorse. To the right of the plant. And then I put one right on top of the plant there. Having trouble picking this one up. Does not want to cooperate. Oh, okay, there we go. So right down next to the scallop. Up here to the right of everything. One right in the middle of the plant. One to the left of the S and the sentiment. Tonight is not my night, guys. And then one here in the top left corner of the card, kind of above and to the left of the seahorse's head there. Trying to clean off the top of my knife head, see if that helps on the next card. All right, so I'll give you a close-up of these to help you out. All right. So next we have Now this sentiment about friends is one that I had on an older stamp set. So I just reused that one because I thought it was nice. It says, friends are like seashells, you pick them up along the way. So this is Wisteria cardstock. Just want to check something here. Sorry, it's actually, I used Wisteria ink, but it's actually Periwinkle is the color of cardstock. The Periwinkle is a little bluer. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to confuse you, but it's correct in your cutting guide. So we scored at 5.5 on the 11-inch side, with the darker side showing. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So the first piece that's going to go down is our wood grain. That's going to get centered on the card so that there's an 1/8 inch border around all 4 sides. Okay. And then the next piece is our Lagoon ferns. Okay, so what we're going to do is put it about 1/4 inch below the top of the wood grain and 1/2 inch from the left edge of the wood grain. Doesn't have to be totally precise. We're just going to stagger these 2 pieces so we see all the different colors and textures. You're missing your smaller green fern piece of paper for this card. This piece, Lindsay? Okay, I will get you one. Sorry about that. I was going to say it's possible it's in one of the envelopes, other envelopes, but that's probably not actually the case. But yeah, I'll get you one. Sorry about that. You're going to have your striped cardstock next. And we're going to put that so that it's about 1/4 inch in from the edge of the wood grain paper on the right and the bottom. And then we're going to put our strip of anchors so that they're about 1 inch from the bottom of the wood grain paper. And it's the width of the card, it's 4 inches. So it goes all the way across the width of the card. Next, we're going to put our sentiment. And this is Glacier cardstock and Wisteria ink. And we're going to put it so it's about, whoops. We're going to put it the left side in line with the wood grain paper, about 1/4 of an inch below the top of the striped paper. I know that was one of the pieces of paper. I was waiting for another one to come in to finish the kit, so I must have just missed it. I apologize. Okay, so now we're going to gather our seashells. And you could see from the beach glass, I used the scallop. I'm going to use the conch shell here. And the I don't know what kind of shell this is. We're going to call it the swirly shell. I'm going to use that out of the brown collection for mine. You're going to use this that's in the bottom right corner of your brown starfish. Yeah, starfish. Got another one here that I'm going to use. And then you're going to use your brown conch shell. I'm just deciding. And then you're going to use your white scallop here. I'm going to use a couple of, instead of the other shell here, I'm just looking at my selection here. I'm going to use a couple of my hearts that I have, especially since it's a friendship card. All right. So these pieces are all a little easier to glue than some of the other ones. Oh, good, Lindsay. I can still send you another piece, though. And I'm just adding some glue to the glossy side of my shell here. I know it's hard because you want to finish the cards. You don't want to wait for another piece to come. If anybody else is missing a piece of something, of course, let me know. All of these are going to get glued down flat, no foam tape on this card. I'm going to move this over here because I used a smaller one and it's not showing up on the stripes as well. You'll notice that the these die cuts are laser cut. So one side is whiter than the other one. This one has brown edges, the back of it, that's from the laser. And on this one, I let the brown edges show, so it stands out a little more. This one, I flipped it over, and so it's more pure white. And either is fine. It's just this one didn't have enough contrast against the white background of the paper. Only a tiny heart. And then I'm going to put my dots of glue for the sparkles. So up here in the corner of the fern paper, down here on the right, to the right of the scallop shell, down here at the bottom near the starfish. I have one here between the two beach shells, but I put my shells close together. It's actually on the anchor strip, but I can't fit one on there. So I'm going to put mine over here. And I'm going to put those 4 down before I decide where to put my 5th one. Making things up as I go, guys. Whoops. Came right back up with my finger. There we go. Yeah, I'm gonna put mine over here, which actually is not far from where I put it on the card. I'm just moving it over a little bit. On the sample, I mean. All right, so here we go. And if you want to see the one I just made. Okay, so this one you may want to alter a little bit. It depends on whether you want a funny card or if you want a more sentimental card. So, hold on just a sec. Okay. So this sentiment says, it's hard to find a friend that is so amazing in every way. My advice is that you don't lose me. So very amusing, and I'm sure we all have somebody to send that to. But if you'd rather keep it more sentimental and just use and not have the last line, just have it's hard to find a friend that is so amazing in every way. Certainly we can do that. And I'm going to show you how. First thing we're going to do, though, is score our periwinkle cardstock on the 11-inch side at 5.5. We are going to make we have 3 pieces of paper here that we're going to lay down to make it look like one continuous background. So first, put down my stripe. This goes on the left side of the card with an 1/8 inch border at the top, bottom, and left. Next, we're going to put our skinny stripe of Lagoon fern paper. And we're going to butt that up right against the stripes. And then we're going to put our beach accessory kind of paper. There's all those beach umbrellas and hammock and all those beachy things on it. And what we're going to do is we could have looked at it before we put the adhesive on, but what I'm going to do is I am going to line it up on the right side of the card so I have my 1/8 inch border at the top, bottom, and right, and put it down. Now, ideally, if it was cut perfectly, it would get put down right next to the fern paper, but mine is going to overlap it a little. And so that's how you get away with having a piece that's not quite cut. If I put it down here on the left side and put it down, it would have come all the way to the edge of the card. I fixed my spacing by overlapping it here. Hope that made sense. All right, so you can pick whichever color combination you preferred, but what I did, I used the Wisteria stamped background, and then I highlighted this banner in the Lagoon. So I stamped it again in the Lagoon, and I'm going to cut out just the banner. So like I said, if you'd rather have more Lagoon words, you can use the Lagoon as your background and cut off just the banner of the Wisteria, whichever one you prefer. I use my bigger scissors for those long straight lines, but now I'm switching back to my little ones to cut these little angles. So I've got my banner. Okay, so now if you like it, if you like the funny aspect of it, you can go ahead and attach your sentiment right down to your Lagoon panel. I actually used the lighter side of the Lagoon on that. And then you would attach the banner over the stamped, the Wisteria banner with foam tape, and then you'd be good. You could also do it flat if you wanted to. If you want to get rid of the funny portion of the line, what you would do is just cut it off. So I am just going to cut it between the banner and that line. On mine, if I put the top of the sentiment panel in the paper cutter, that's at 2 1/8. And there you go. And that means we also want to trim the Lagoon panel. You want to put it in the paper cutter so that it currently measures 2 3/4 inches, but that you want to trim it at 2 3/8. So you put the side that it currently measures 2 3/4 in the paper cutter, line it back up at 2 3/8, trim off that little strip, and now your altered sentiment should fit perfectly. There are ways, to, when you're stamping, to mask it off. And if you're ever interested in that kind of thing, I can certainly show you. But in this case, it's just one line. It's a straight cut. So I thought, you know what? It's just easier to just cut it off than to worry about not stamping it. So I put that right on there. And now I'm going to add foam tape to my banner. You'll see that on some of you might have noticed on some of my pieces here, it's stamped on both sides. I didn't get some perfect stamping on some of them, so I just turned it over and stamped on the other side. I don't generally do that on your pieces, but I'll do them on my pieces. I try to give you a nice clean one. All right, so I put foam tape on the back of my banner, and I am attaching it on top of my purple banner. And now I have a more sentimental card. And I'm going to go ahead and attach that, put adhesive on the back of that, and attach it to my card. And I'm putting it about 1/4 of an inch in from the left edge of the striped paper and about 3/4 of an inch down from the top of the card. All right, so now we're going to add our embellishments, and we're going to use our beach glass swirly shell, the large one. I'm going to use my starfish. You should have a small beach glass starfish. And a small beach glass scallop shell. I am going to use my last 2 little hearts and one of my seagulls. Oh, sorry, the larger heart is at the top, too. And so all the embellishments are the blue beach glass. So we can attach those all with the liquid glue. Put the heart up in the top corner here. On my sample, I overlapped the sentiment piece, but since this one's a little smaller, I didn't. Your starfish there and your scallop down here. And then we're going to put your sparkles on. Got one in the bottom right corner. I've got one here in the left on the stripes. One kind of centered below the sentiment strip. One on the right side of the sentiment. And one on the above the sentiment near the heart. There we go. Sample on the left, the one I did tonight on the right. Whoops. All right. So now we're going to go back to our watercolor panel and definitely dry enough. If you've made two, you pick which one you want to use. We are going to trim it down. Would have been faster to use my ruler. All right, so we want it to trim it down to be 4 inches wide and 3.5 inches tall. So you can make that decision. I'm going to trim off this edge. You can trim off a little bit off each edge or just off of one. So this is 4 inches tall, so I'm trimming off 1/2 inch. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a little bit off the bottom, and then I'm going to trim the rest off the top. And you can trim yours whichever way you like best. And then you'll notice in your kit here, I gave you adhesive paper. Now, mine is in 3 pieces because I'm trying to use up what I have. You either got 1 or 2 pieces. And I found that because this paper is curled, you want it to lie nice and flat on your card. So if you use the adhesive paper, the adhesive sheet on the back of it, it would then lie nice and flat. So that one is one solution to the curling. So what I'm going to do here is basically I just figured out if you have more than one piece, I figured out how, I don't know why I have this third piece, I don't need it, but figured out how they would fit nicely on there to completely cover the back of your watercolored piece. And I'm peeling off one side of the backing, and then I'm sticking down the adhesive to the back of my cardstock. And then I'm going to do that with the other piece as well. It's the hardest part, is right getting the backing paper off. Doesn't matter which side you pull off first. I am lining up. I didn't get it quite in line, but it's going to be fine. And you can see I have overhang. So I'm going to take my nonstick scissors. Actually, I lied. I'm going to do my X-Acto knife. And I'm putting up my ruler in line with the edge of my watercolored panel and cutting off that extra adhesive. And now it's nice and flush. So that's all prepared. We can score our cardstock at 5.5 inches. Whoops. Be a little more careful with this, with the white daisy. We're going to put our 2 pieces of wood grain paper, those 2 strips on first. So I'm going to put adhesive on the back of each of them. And I'm going to put them, so I'm going to center them left to right and put an 1/8 inch border at the top and bottom. So they look like this. If you took a look at the catalog, you'll notice that there is a card like this in the catalog. I changed it a little bit, but I loved it so much that I had to do this one. All right, so now I'm taking off the backing paper, the other side off of the adhesive sheet. Now be careful, because once you stick this down, it's not like the ATG, it's stuck. So I'm going to hover over my card and center it between the 2 wood grain strips. That's why we put those on first, so we can get it nice and centered between the 2. And then I'm going to burnish it down really well. And that adhesive makes it nice and flat again. So all the advantages of having a watercolored panel, but we don't have to deal with the curling. And now we just have to put on our accessories. Now we are going to color our palm tree, and you're going to use the palm tree that's on the white. I, of course, already used mine, so I'm going to use the brown one, the smaller one. So mine's going to look a little different than yours, but you've got the sample here to look at. And then you're also going to need 2 of the beach fences. Luckily, there's 4 on the sheet, so I'm good there. And then you're going to use your 2 white seagulls. And there's more of those too, so I'm good. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out our brown and our green. I use sage, but you can use any color green. I might have to use a slightly darker color. We'll see. Because I'm working on brown, you're working on white. I'm going to take my scrap paper. Now you can use a sponge, a makeup sponge. You can use your distress tool. I'm going to use my my blending brush. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to swirl it in. I'm using the green first. Swirl it in my ink pad. And I'm just going to test it on my scrap paper, and it is giving me some color here. I'm going to make sure I'm putting it on the correct side. I want my tree leaning to the left here. And I'm going to go ahead and blend some of that green color onto my palm fronds. And it's funny, it's looking much darker on camera than it is in real life, I think. And you can keep it as light or as dark as you want. I mean, this is really pale. In real life, palm fronds are actually much darker than that. So whichever way you prefer. I just want some contrast. So that's good. And then you're going to do the same thing with the brown on your tree trunk. Now, I forgot I had to tape this closed. Wow, my tape is especially sticky. There we go. I don't really have to do this because mine is already brown, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to show you. Rub my brush in the ink in the circular motion, and then again in a circular motion, add my color to my tree trunk. And again, you can make it as light or as dark as you want. And there you should have a colored tree. All right, and we just have to glue these down now. So I'm going to glue my tree down first. Use my scrap paper again and use my liquid glue. I've got mine. See now, see this what it looks when the tree is much darker. I'm going to put my seagulls on. And then I'll put my fence. This one is a little bigger than the other one I used, so. And then my and you can look and make sure that you like the way the direction you're putting it on. And again, got little pieces here, so if you want to use that glue pen, I've got a little easier time doing it because my bottle of glue is just about empty, so there's not a lot coming out, which is actually an advantage in this case. All right, so I'm putting it the right side right up against the right edge of the card. Use my bone folder to make sure that's stuck down really well, which I should have done with my other pieces too. And it does overlap the bottom of the tree, which is fine. And then I just want to check the positioning of my fence here. Nope, I like that way better. So, and when I attach this one, I'm going to make sure it's right up against and in line with the first piece I put down. And the left side is going to, I think, overlap the edge of the card. If that's okay, we're going to just trim that off. It's better than it being a little short, right? Whoops. Squeezed out a little too much glue there. All right, so I'm going to make sure that it's lined up in the middle, and see it's overlapping the left side. I'm first going to make sure I press that good down with my bone folder. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and trim flush at the edge of the card there. And now my fence is perfect. And I just get a little blob of glue there. That's where I got a little overzealous, but that'll dry clear. And then I just have to add my sparkles. So I've got 3 down here. And I've got 2 up here. There we go. And that's it. It's the last card. I really hope you enjoyed these cards. And I hope you enjoy using the rest of your embellishments on more projects. I sent out a new email on Sunday that has my new classes, upcoming classes. We've got the pandas. On August 22nd. So these are really cute pandas. Pretty easy cards to put together, but just nice little pick-me-up cards that anybody should love, because everybody loves pandas, right? And then, unbelievably, we're getting into the fall season. So on September 5th, we are going to do fall leaves, autumn leaves. So we've got this beautiful wreath and these leaf clusters, and you will do the ink blending. I'll do the stamping and the cutting for you, and then you'll do the ink blending. Or if you prefer, you could watercolor them or color them with markers or pencils. But I really love this ink blending look and technique. So let me know if you're interested in those. If you have any questions about tonight's class, let me know. And thank you very much. And I will see you soon. Thanks.